Let me ask one more question, then we'll turn to audience questions. And Amishi, it's for you. I want to play the skeptic with you for a second. You showed us the chart that shows how potent these gases really are. And so I'm curious, why are we asking a voluntary system, a voluntary carbon market to abate these? Why is there not regulation on the industries that emit these to abate them and take care of them?
Yeah, and I feel like that's probably the toughest question out there, right? Like this is something we grapple with. Like, couldn't this be insetting? Why can't governments just step up to the plate? And I think in the last couple weeks alone, I think we are getting a prime example in the US on how finicky sometimes expecting governments to step up to a plate can be. Speaking from past experience, right? Government also needs a whole spectrum of things before it can enforce, right? It needs measurements, it needs an infrastructure, it needs like resources, right? And I feel like a lot of the projects that we invest in are these really high impact underfunded areas that there is a little bit of momentum, but it hasn't been enough to translate change. And what I see the VCM as is really, I think, Stephen, you called it, some people view it as a really cool finance tool. It is an extremely effective way to move corporate finance, corporate dollars into the hands of people that are effectively making change in almost like a frictionless space. So while you are seeing things like the Global Methane Pledge, you are seeing other efforts, to address emissions from cooling, in particular HFCs, and you're seeing the Montreal Protocol and the Kilgagi amendment. They're still in terms of quantified impacts, they're just now starting to get like dollars translated into actions, right? Like even with the Global Methane Pledge, which was like, I believe 150 countries signing on to it, 2% of global climate finance is dedicated towards methane. That's not enough. So I think there's a lot of potential for these to effectively come up in global regulations or in domestic regulations. And I do believe they can be enforced, especially when you can include them in NDCs. But I think there's a bridge before we get there. And I think a really effective bridge is the VCM in particular for like figuring out issues with additionality, figuring out issues with, what it takes to deploy these technologies. And I just think it's a really adaptive mechanism that responds very quickly to in particular criticisms that we've seen in the past, right? So I think that market value that it has is really helpful in this bridging space in my mind.